Martin, you said we need a new narrative of growth and also new metrics. You applied that to the company level, but would you also think that we would need new metrics for the whole economy? I mean, there have been tons of commissions on, measuring well-being and whatever, the Stiglitz Commission. What do you think? Could your concept from measuring growth at the company level transfer this to the broader economy level?
Yeah, I think there's a role for industry bodies and accounting bodies too to standardize some of the metrics we have for these broader social impact measures. I mean, we see some progress towards that, but we still don't really have standard ways of comparing the performance of one company to another. I'm more concerned with the sort of micro-level problem, but certainly that collective problem of metrics is also important, I think.
Yeah. Why is it, and this, I'm asking all of you, why is it so hard to get beyond this traditional measuring of growth? Because, as I said, there have been lots of efforts, lots of commissions, but really there has really not been that much follow-up on this. Everybody's still talking about GDP and straight growth. Yeah, Frank.
Well, I mean, I think it's a reminder of long diffusion lags. So, for instance, the UN has developed some very interesting wealth accounting techniques to complement standard national income accounts. The data are very striking if you take them on board. Amongst other things, they suggest that 70% of the wealth of a typical industrialized country is human capital. And once you register that fact, that starts to shape your social priorities quite a bit in terms of education, in terms of training. And, but I've been a little bit, I must say, surprised and unhappy about how long it's taken those measures to infiltrate the public discourse. So we do have better measures. Perhaps we also need better communication.
Because it's too complicated, or because no one doesn't really care, or what's the reason for that?
Well, part of it is complications. Wealth accounting is always, or accounting, measurement of stocks is always requires more assumptions than measuring flows. But part of it is, unfortunately, it's devised by academics. It's what people in academia tend to think, which is if you put a better method out there, it will diffuse. I think that diffusing the UN universities' wealth indices would help very considerably at shifting perceptions of the agenda from how do we boost GDP to what actually makes a country richer over time, which gets into some of these issues of sustainable growth as opposed to let's dig a lot of oil out of the ground and use that to pump up income in the short run, no matter what it does for the long run.
Okay, thank you. Anil, no, Martin was first.
Well, one, I agree with everything that Pankaj says about the inertial lag of collective behaviors around metrics and so on. But I mean, one helpful or hopeful sign, I think, is that I think sustainability always used to be something extra for companies. Their core responsibility was always returns to shareholders and perceived as such. But now actually we see the problem of sustainability as an economic problem, economic sustainability, the acceleration of product life cycles, the increase in company mortality rates means that this the traditional question of strategy, how good is our game, needs to be complemented by a second question, which is how long will that game last? And that's something you can actually put into numbers. So I think there's a much stronger incentive now at the level of each company to actually look at these sustainability issues because they are core economic issues.
Yeah, because it's always also hard to change things without pressure. I mean, Anil, you said that earlier, that now with the environmental stuff, I mean, like 40, 50 years after the Club of Rome, finally people see how bad it's getting, so they really need to think about changing the paradigm of growth. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, another, kind of spin I would have on this question is to disaggregate into what should our goals be for the economy, for the society, and then how do we achieve those goals. Historically, it's probably accurate to say that the goal in a lot of economies, certainly a lot of emerging economies, has been unidimensional growth in terms of GDP growth. But I think the objectives now, and I alluded to that in my remarks, is that the objectives themselves are now becoming more multidimensional. At least two of the other dimensions that are increasingly getting incorporated in the goals themselves. One is distribution, and the second is environmental impact. So those are no longer viewed as externalities to worry about, 15 years, 20 years later, but to include them now. Then the other part, of course, is how do we achieve that? So I would separate the goals, the change in goals, and then in terms of how do we achieve those goals.
Okay. Yeah, we are running out of time. I can see that. I was